All right, how about we get going on video 9? Let's talk about triangles. Grab those geo books. Let's do this. Okay, your first vocab word is actually just a bunch of letters, CPCTC, which stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, well that sounds really confusing. Okay, corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. C, corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, all that's saying is that the parts that correspond on two congruent triangles, okay, let's say these two are congruent, okay, the parts that correspond, like these two, okay, are congruent. So if the two triangles are congruent, then their corresponding parts are congruent. Okay, so what we have here, right here, this is called a congruency statement. Okay, it states that two shapes are congruent. Remember, this is our symbol for congruent. Okay, now we can get a lot of information from this statement right here about sides and angles. So first thing is, look at the first two letters. We have A and B. And the first two letters of this triangle, D and E. That tells us that side AB is congruent to side DE. So we can label that. Side AB is congruent to side DE. Okay. And so on. We can look at the next two letters. BC is congruent to EF. So the order is really important. So BC, right here, is congruent to EF. Right here. So that means they're the same length. And then our last side would be AC is congruent to DF. Okay, it's all about the order. So we can go ahead and mark that. So AC is congruent to DF. Okay, so with a congruency statement, we're able to label all of our congruent sides. Another thing we can do with the congruency statement is mark the congruent angles. Okay, so if you look here, we can see A comes first, so that means angle A is congruent to angle D. So we can mark that. Angle A is congruent to angle D. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 marks here because remember we talked about that. A lot of times we'll see it written like that because it's across from the side that has 2. So this has 2, so we put 2 here. 2 here, 2 here. Okay, so the next thing is angle B is congruent to angle E. So angle B is congruent to angle E. And those are supposed to be curved, it's just hard to do on here. Okay, and then our last set would be C is congruent to F. Okay, so a lot of information we can get from here, and we can write it out too. So we can say side AB is congruent to side DE. And from this statement and the pictures, we can say that side BC is congruent to side EF. And our last one would be AC is congruent to DF. So we can talk about the sides. We can also talk about the angles. So angle A is congruent to angle D. And angle B is congruent to angle E. And I'm sure you know the last one. Angle C is congruent to angle F. Okay, so the parts that correspond, the parts that correspond on congruent triangles are congruent. So these are corresponding parts, and they are congruent. Okay, so go ahead and go to the middle of your book. We're going to take some notes, or we're going to do some problems here. So it says, write a congruency statement from the given triangles. So just looking at these, we have to look at where everything's marked, okay? And we have to come up with our own congruency statement. And I would say the easiest way is just to look at the angles. Okay, so we have to start with a congruent symbol. Okay, and we're working with triangles, so triangle, we're going to name them in a second, is congruent to triangle. We'll get that one in a minute. Okay, so let's start with this triangle. Okay, I'll start with the one that has one mark, okay, and that's letter Q. So Q, and then we'll go to 2, Q, R, P, so 1, 2, 3. So Q, R, P, triangle QRP is congruent to, and we go over here, you can see these two are corresponding parts. They're going to be congruent. So this one has 1, here's our 2, and here's our 3. So J, K, L. J, K, L. That's our congruency statement. That's it. Pretty easy, right? Okay, problem 2. Find the length of side AB. So we're looking for this. Okay, we know it's 7x minus 4, but we need to know the actual length. So we need to find x. We have our congruency statement. So we know that side AB is congruent to DE. Okay, that's the order. So AB goes with DE. So here's DE. And we could tell by the marks. See how there's 2 marks here and 2 marks here. We know that these two are congruent. So all we have to do is set up an equation. So we know that 7x minus 4 is equal to the congruent side, which is 31. Now we just have to solve our equation. We'll get x and plug it back in. So add 4 to both sides. We're just solving for x. So 7x equals 35. Divide by 7. So x equals 5. Okay, well that's what x equals. I want to know what is this length. So we need to plug it in. So 7 times whatever x is, which was 5, minus 4 will be side AB. So that's 35 minus 4. That equals 31. So over here, I'll put my answer. AB equals 31, whatever units it is. Okay, for our last problem, we're going to be finding an angle measure. So we're looking for angle C, which is right here. Okay, so we know that angle C is 3x plus 4 degrees. Okay, well we need to figure out what is angle C congruent with over here. So we know that C is congruent with F. So angle C is equal to angle F. So 3x plus 4 is equal to 34. Well, that's going to help us find x. We can plug it back in and we'll be able to get angle C. Let's give it a try. So 3x plus 4 is equal to 34, right? Angle C is equal to angle F. And then subtract 4. So we get 3x equals 30. Divide by 3. And we get that x equals 10. Well, I'm looking for angle C, so I'm going to go up here and plug in 10. So 3 times 10 plus 4 is 30 plus 4, or 34 degrees. Didn't we already know that? Because we knew that C was congruent to F. We already knew the angle C was 34. But hey, it's good practice. So over here, we'll put angle C is equal to 34 degrees. It's a polygonal family. If we treat sides equally, equilateral is what we be.